So I wanted to take just a second to just kind of step back and say where have we been as far as the classes this time, and then what we're going to do this evening. So we decided what it was, and it was called a postmodern process. So what does that mean? I mean, all you have to do is say deconstruction equals postmodern. What does that mean, postmodern? Where's the authority figure when it comes to postmodern thinking? Yeah, it's the self. Where's the exterior? That's what you worry about, and that's what you don't buy into. You don't want anybody telling you what to do. Key word is freedom. You be you. You do you. Look within. Trust yourself. Remember the Disney stuff that Steve brought in, those clips? Follow your heart. That's hilarious. That's that theme over and over in every Disney show. And the catch is all those songs are pretty memorable, so people go around humming them. And yeah. So it's a postmodern process. It's getting rid of an exterior authority so you can be the authority. So that was kind of where we've gone. And now tonight we're going to look at 2 chapters in the book. Again, you don't need to have the book. We'll cover it, I think, thoroughly enough. And I'll send outlines and things like that. So chapter 9 talks about what is it that's being deconstructed. And there's one word, faith. So we'll come back to that in just a second. And chapter 10, who are the people that are doing the deconstructing? In other words, what's in their hearts? What's going on? How are they thinking? And the catch is, we do the same thing. We haven't taken that step like they have, but we're going to talk about the commonness that we have with people who have walked away from God. So chapter 9, faith. This comes from, I looked them up online. It's a husband and wife. And it's cute. They start each YouTube episode, they turn to each other and kiss each other. And then they say, and then they go on, they're deconstructionists. They walked away from Christianity. For a while they walked away from their marriage. But they came back together. And they talk about how wonderful it is to have deconstructed. So this is what the husband has said. Nobody should be able to tell you what your faith needs to look like because that's dependent on you. The moment you start to believe when somebody tells you this is what Christianity looks like, this is how you have to walk it out, you're then stepping into somebody else's identity and somebody else's shoes, and you're not being who you are. What's the key word up there? You, about a half a dozen times. So the idea is don't let anybody fence you in or tell you the way things should be. You get to decide. That's that postmodern view again. Now, they're a real cute couple, and they seem very happy, but you can take a look sometime if you want. If you want, I'll get the names. I can't remember their names right now. But here's what Paul says in the book of Galatians. You were running well. Who hindered you from obeying the truth? Right? There's something out there you're supposed to be obeying, and you're falling away from that. So your faith, the faith you have, and that's what Paul is saying, you have a faith, but you're not matching your faith up with the faith, the Christian faith that's out there. There's 2 things. That's objective out there. You've turned it into something subjective. So this chapter starts talking about, I think it makes really good sense. There is a personal faith that all of us have, and then there is the Christian faith that we all buy into because that's why we're here, and that can differ from people. So do you think we all have the same degree? I'm going to start using the word trust. I'm not a real fan of the word faith. We'll talk about that in a couple minutes. The word trust works a lot better for Christianity. Do you think all of us in the room here have the same level of trust? I don't think so. There's certain areas where you go, well, I believe it, but I'm not sure. Or I couldn't explain it to somebody else. Or I've wondered about that for years. If we're really honest, we would all have some of those issues. So this is the key thing they're saying there. Our personal faith is different from the Christian faith. So the subjective part of us would say something like, gosh, a year ago I was more enthusiastic about Christianity, I was willing to share it, or I just felt better about it. And then something's happened. I feel like I'm kind of stepping back a little bit. But the objective view would be something like this. Jude says contend for, there it is again, the faith, not do what makes you feel good, or pick a faith and enjoy it. Paul says, I've finished the race. I have kept the faith, not I feel pretty good about myself. He's kept the faith out there. So there's the objective part of it. So when somebody starts talking about their faith, what do you think they mean?
mean a lot of things.
Can mean a lot of things, huh? Faith is one of those real fuzzy words, isn't it? Might be good to just say, what do you mean by faith when you're talking to somebody? And we're going to talk about one type that I think is really, really common. It's the leap in the dark kind of faith. So we'll get to that in just a minute. Somebody had a hand up, Linda?
Well, it's okay. You just asked the question of faith. I think it's your walk with God. That's your faith.
Yeah.
That's it's in levels, different levels. As you learn more, as you read more, it's a gradual evolving more and more.
Which is the Christian perspective. A lot of people will use that in a slightly different sense. Deconstructionists will say, I don't really have the kind of faith I used to have. I'm getting more and more questions in my mind, and therefore, the Christian faith itself, that thing that's out there, I don't trust anymore. I mean, do you see the distinction between I'm personally struggling, or I'm personally clouded with doubts, or I'm personally not as convinced anymore, and to say, therefore, the Christian faith is shaky, there's something wrong with the Christian faith. They're taking their own problem and calling it the Christian problem. So you're hearing that a lot with deconstructionists. What do you think some of the incorrect beliefs might be? In other words, where do people struggle with Christianity?
Hell.
What?
Hell.
Hell, okay, I've got it up here on the list. I think so. Have you heard of Rob Bell? He put out a book some time ago called Love Wins. And his idea was, there's really not going to be a hell, everybody's going to get saved. And he was a pastor. It's like, wow. So a lot of people do struggle with that idea of hell. What are some other areas you think people might have different views on, and some are more strong than others, John?
There are many ways to get to heaven.
Yeah, that's a big one today, isn't it? Postmodernism again. You pick your path. You do you. Right? There's that old idea of there's a mountaintop, and that's God, and there's a whole bunch of trails that are going up the mountain. You got the Buddhists going up one way, and you got the Muslims, you got all these groups. They're going to get to God. They're all going to get there at the end. The catch is everybody's got a different idea of God. Yeah, Jeff?
Fred Turek says that there's three problems with culture today: morality, morality, morality.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, they're very uncomfortable with the idea of you ought to do this, or God says, this kind of thing. But who's God to tell me? Donna, were you going to say something?
Oh, I was just going to say that so many people do not want to have what they consider a list of do's and don'ts, and they figure that if God's going to accept them, they'll wait until they've had a fun life and then, just jump in on the gravy train at the end.
Yeah. I used to think that when I was younger. I thought, as you face death, if you really had a major disease, or somebody around you that you loved had passed away, it seems like you'd get your act together. But I think your heart gets hardened for many people, and they've spent their whole life saying no to God, no to God, no to God, and then all of a sudden there's that abyss out there, and they're still not willing to say, I better get my act together. This may be my last month or week or whatever to live. Here's some other ones. What about age of the earth? That's always a good one to get people angry, right? There are different views in Christianity. Just to keep that in mind, we're not going to cover that tonight, but there are different ideas among Christians, good Christians, not non-believing people, but there are a lot of different views of how do you interpret Genesis. Some people are called young earthers, some are called old earthers. You got some that think it's a framework, called framework theory. A lot of ways to interpret that. Hell. How about the role of women? Does that stir up churches? Yes. Yeah, duh. Free will and predestination.
Oh, that's a big one.
That's a huge one. I've gone back and forth on that about 1,000 times myself. Because I do believe in free will, but then you read verses about, I've chosen you. Yikes, how does that fit in? So, no wonder that can be a problem. How about the role of works? People love James, they'll pick that because he talks about the value of works. Show me your faith by your works. And yet we say we're saved by faith, not by works. So some people struggle a little bit with that. How about the Bible itself? Don't you think a lot of people think of it as kind of old-fashioned, or they have a hard time reading it?
Man wrote it.
What's that?
Men wrote it.
Oh yeah, men wrote it. Yeah, so there's the end of that. My favorite is, I read the King James Version. I thought it was hard to read, so the Bible's archaic. Yeah, the King James Version is 400 years old. Greg Coakley used to say, use the King James with somebody who's 400 years old. Otherwise, go to a new version of the Bible. And by the way, the Bible, a lot of people think of it as linear. In other words, you had the Old Testament, you had the New Testament, and then you had a translation, and then somebody translated off of that, and then somebody translated off of that. That's not the way Bible translations go. What do? They go back all the way back. The most modern translations have the most old documents now to look at because the manuscripts are showing up. There are more and more of those old manuscripts. So it's not one translation is, that's like the telephone game where you start that circle and you whisper and all of a sudden nobody understands anything. That's not what's going on with the Bible. But these are at least some, and you can probably think of some other areas where people are a little shaky or confused about things. I wanted to share something with you here in just a second. I thought they made a really good point in the book. They said, people that walk away from Christianity think of it as, oh, I just examined it and I'm walking away from it because it's a bunch of beliefs and I look at those beliefs and I don't like the beliefs, they don't match with me. I walk away, shake my hands and I'm off and I get to do what I want to do. And here's the deal though, as they say in the book, Christianity is not a set of do's and don'ts and a manuscript evidence. I mean, that stuff's good, but it's a relationship. It's a relationship. And deconstruction, if you're going to walk away, you're not walking away from Christianity in a sense. You're walking away from Jesus, which is a whole different thing. So here's an example. If you have a car and the time comes where you look at it and you look how many repairs you're putting on it, and you look at a sheet of what you've spent the last 6 months, or you look at the gas mileage and whatever, and you say, I think it's time, and you get rid of that car. Most of us are not all that connected to the car. We're anxious to get something else. But what about a marriage? If somebody starts saying, I don't know if my spouse is being faithful, and they start following them around and sending detectives out and grilling them every night when they come back, where you been, what have you been up to? I mean, that would destroy the relationship fast, right? I wanted to share with you a story about a man named Charles Templeton. Oh, wrong one. Hang on. Okay, so Charles Templeton, these are my cheat sheets here. I don't think I'm going to need them completely. At the beginning of Lee Strobel's book called The Case for Faith, most people just want to leap into the book, fine. But he's got a foreword there where he sat down with a man named Charles Templeton. Now, that name didn't mean anything to me. Templeton was a friend of Billy Graham. And the two of them went out when they were young and they preached together. They would kind of tag team. One would preach one night, one would do the next night. They roomed together and they were really best buddies. And then there was a kind of a crisis of faith they both had. And Billy Graham kind of analyzed his, he deconstructed a bit and realized this is still the best thing going. He said, even if I don't understand everything, and he stepped this way, Charles Templeton said, I don't understand some of it and I'm not as convinced anymore, and he went this way, and he quit Christianity. And he wrote a book. It was called Farewell to God, My Reasons for Rejecting the Christian Faith. So Strobel is talking to him, and now Templeton is pretty old, and his health was failing. So Strobel starts talking to him. He says, well, what did you think about Jesus? Back to this idea of a relationship. Templeton said, he was the greatest human being who's ever lived. He was a moral genius. He's the most important thing in my life. And then he kind of stuttered and paused. He went, I know it may sound strange, but I have to say, pause, I adore him. Everything good I know, everything decent I know, everything pure I know, I learned from Jesus. In my view, he's the most important human being who's ever existed. So then Strobel asked him one final question. And he said, so what's happened to that relationship? And he said, if I can put it this way, and his voice began to crack, I miss him. And I said big tears came into his eyes. But he didn't come back. But he tore that relationship up, not just a set of beliefs. Oh, I don't agree about the age of the earth, or whatever it is. But that wasn't what Templeton took from that. He took from that he was giving up a person, and it killed him to do it. And I think, he should have come back. So that's what I think is really important here, that deconstructionists are not just giving up a set of principles, they're giving up a person. So can I ask you, we'll all have doubts. How do you handle doubts? What works for you to get beyond that? Because for the deconstructionists, they have a doubt and they walk away. We have doubts and most of us plow through them. How do we do that? Do you have some things that have helped you?
Reading your Bible.
Okay, reading the Bible.
Study.
Because that's supposed to be the authority anyway, isn't it? Instead of how you feel in the moment. Yeah.
Study, going to apologetics class.
Going to apologize. I'll pay you later.
No, really, it's being here and reading other books as well, some of them that we covered in some years past, but then reading other ones too. It's like, wow, I've learned a whole lot more.
Yeah.
Really rock solid in my faith.
Don't you think any question that we have, other people have had? I mean, who's going to come up with a completely unique doubt about Christianity? If you doubt the life of Jesus, the resurrection of Jesus, if you doubt the New Testament manuscripts, people write all these books. In fact, I'm going to send links out to 4 of my favorites to you. I was going to bring them here, but they were huge, so yeah, I'll just send you a list to them. Anything else that you do when you deal with doubts? Yeah, Jeff?
John 6:37, all that the Father brings to me, I will never cast out.
Oh, that's nice, isn't it? We're back to that relationship. What's that?
I will never cast you out.
Yeah.
That should give you all the comfort in the world.
Yeah.
To know.
And this is somebody that came back from the dead.
Jesus will not cast you out.
Yeah, yeah, that's good.
John 6:37.
Yeah. Do you have either a personal friend or a small group that you can share the doubts with? Because sometimes we think, I'm the only one that's ever wondered that. My guess is you share it with somebody else and they're going to say, I've been there, or that's been an issue that I've dealt with as well. Yeah, so I just put a few things down here. Most of them we've talked about here. We don't want to depend on our personal feelings. Diane was talking about going to the Bible, authority of God's Word, talking with other Christians, acknowledging our doubts. Do you ever read the Bible and notice how many people in the Old Testament especially had a lot of doubts? Yeah, they're always saying, why, God? You're not listening. I'm praying and I don't hear you.
Just go to the New Testament. John the Baptist.
John the Baptist.
Who was there with Jesus.
Yeah.
Who saw him, saw God come down, gets thrown in prison, and says to his disciples, go to Jesus and ask him, are you really the one I doubt?
Yeah.
And Jesus said what? Go tell John the evidence that you have seen.
Yeah, he says you've seen miracles and you've seen this and you've seen that.
Yes.
Yeah.
But John the Baptist had doubts.
Yeah, that's right. Thomas hung around with 3 years with Jesus. Well, I'm not going to believe until I actually physically touch him. Here you go.
When Jesus left, he went after Thomas. I'm gonna show you why you shouldn't doubt. He
Yeah.
went after him a couple of times.
Yeah. Acknowledging our doubts and finding answers. That's back to, not necessarily apologetics, but apologetics like Vinny was talking about. There's so many, again, this is the golden age. People are writing all sorts of amazing books on apologetics. I mean, when I grew up and when I was getting in church, involved in church and all, even as a college student, it was really rare to find any books. And all of a sudden, Josh McDowell comes along. And he was like the first star in the night sky. It was like, okay, everybody's got to go read Josh. Well, now you got his son doing it, and now they're passing on the generations of people that are exploring all sorts of aspects of Christianity, amazing things that are out there that we can read. And websites, oh my goodness, and podcasts, all sorts of things. So I wanted to spend a couple of minutes talking about faith, because that's what this chapter says, that people have walked away from Christianity. They say, I don't know, that faith thing, I don't really buy into it. Is Christianity a leap in the dark kind of faith? That's the way most people think of it. That's why I'd rather call it trust. If you say, my faith is Christianity, no, our trust is in Jesus. Trust to me is a way better, stronger word than faith, because people misuse it all the time. They think of this. You ever had somebody say to you, I wish I had your faith? You ever hear that? Kind of like you're building muscles. You just need to work out more and you could have my faith. Okay, that's not the Christian faith. It's not about us. It's not about us cranking up our faith at all. Biblical faith, again, it's built on, and I'm going to give you some examples, it's built on reasons. It's built on evidence. It's built on knowledge, not, gee, I don't have any information, I guess I'll be a Christian. That's not Christianity. So trust is the key word. It is a response. The evidence comes first, and then Christianity follows as trust. So I'll just read the verse because that's a little faster here than me trying to tell the whole story. But do you remember when the children of Israel, they get out of Egypt because the plagues come? By the way, you know they found some Egyptian documents that talk about things that sound exactly like the plagues? They just found those the last 5 or 10 years. Pretty cool stuff out there. This one poet, he's an Egyptian poet, and he's going, woe is us. You know, blood's in the water, and we've lost our offspring. And he's got all this stuff. You're going, wow. And he even says, and they've stolen all of our jewels. It's like, yeah. Anyway, so Moses, the people see all of these things that God does. They go out into the desert, and this is what it says. This is Exodus 14:31. And when Israel saw the great power which the Lord had used against the Egyptians, the people feared the Lord. They believed. So their trust came after they saw everything. Moses didn't go up to him and say, hey, there's a God, and he cares for us, and he'll make life wonderful. Just trust me. I mean, that wasn't it. He said, watch this. Remember, earlier than that, Moses says, I don't know if I'm the right one to go to the people. And he says, throw your staff down. Right? And he's giving them reasons right off to say, yeah, this is for real. And so the children of Israel, that's when they believe. They see those plagues come and plagues come and plagues come and God protecting them. And they go, yeah, we believe. But the belief came after the evidence. Then in Mark 2, do you remember the story about Jesus and the paralytic? They lowered this guy. You know the story. And what's the first thing Jesus says to him?
Sins are forgiven.
Your sins are forgiven. Your faith has healed you. Your sins are forgiven. And how did the scribes take that? Typical scribes. Wait a minute. They go, what do you mean? Anybody could say that. I could say that. I could say that right now. I can say your sins are forgiven. You go, who are you? You know, where are we getting that? So Jesus says, oh really? He says, so that you may believe. What does he do? Heals the guy. Get up, take up your mat and head off. And at that point, you see, he was saying, okay, if you want evidence, I'll give you evidence. I'll give you the evidence and then you believe. So that's biblical faith. Now, I wanted to do 2 examples from my life. Okay, I'm going to give you 2 examples. I want to know if you're going to trust me. So I'm going to give you some details. You're going to gain some knowledge about me. All right? So here's the first example. I have a teaching credential. I've taught English classes since 1969. I ran the English tutoring center out at Palomar College for a while. I've written and edited books. I've had my own articles published in magazines. So here's my question. Would you trust me to help you write something? I think so. But you wouldn't have if I just walked up here and say, would you trust me to write, help you write? You go, I don't know. What's your background? So I gave you evidence. You looked at it and you said, okay, it sounds likely. Yeah, but let me give you another example. I've never taken any classes in home electrical wiring. I've never been awarded a degree in electrical engineering. I've never worked with a certified electrician. I ended up shocking myself trying to do something at my house. It was a 3-way switch, and I'd forgotten it was a 3-way switch. I cut the power to 1, and I'm taking the wires, and it was like, whoa! Whoop. So I'm just glad I'm here tonight. So my question, would you trust me to help you out with your wiring? No.
No, but I'll watch you.
Yeah. You might stay back with a long pole. Ted's laughing because he's our electrical guy back here. So do you see, it all depends on the evidence. You only make up your mind when you hear the story, my story in this case. So that's what's going on with biblical faith. It's not faith, it's trust because you've seen it in the past. So can I ask you again, I'd like to hear from you, what are some things that you've gone through or you've seen results of that create more faith for you or more trust? And it could be any of these things here. Has anything like this improved your faith with Jesus, trust in Jesus? That last one down there is kind of shrunk, but it's the word health. You had answers to prayer. You had friends that you were praying for that changed their life and all. Yeah, Josie?
Yeah, just this week, my son who has Down syndrome, he had to go get a cardiac MRI with contrast, so that means they have to put a IV in you and then I guess put dye and stuff in you. He freaks out when he sees needles. And so I have like 3 different groups of women that I pray with, and so I ask each of my groups, please pray for him, that he'll be cooperative and that we can get a good test so we can figure out what's going on with his heart. And so we got there, and this young man walks in, and he's just a cool guy, and my son loves cool people, you know. So the guy comes up and goes, "Hey, Aaron, how you doing?" You know, and he says, "Come on back." And I thought, okay, I'm just going to leave these 2 alone and sit out here and pray. And it was amazing. It was a 2.5-hour test, and he had to hold his breath for 15-second intervals. So I mean, it wasn't just like you go in there and lay down. He had to actually be actively doing something. Anyway, it was so fantastic because 2.5 hours later, they both walk out. They're both smiling and still, you know, this. And it's just because for those 2.5 hours, you know, me and my friends were all praying. And it's just amazing to see how God can take something that seems so hard and just make it easy.
Yeah. Yeah, Gail?
Well, I don't really have anything specific that I'd like to discuss, but what I have found for me is looking back at his faithfulness. I mean, when I was in the womb, I could see his dealing in my life, even then and all the way through my life. Just how he's orchestrated situations for my good and my benefit.
Yeah.
That could have gone so wrong had he not loved me and done that.
Yeah.
Just looking back and watching all those things.
That's a good point. In many cases, it is a series of things rather than just one big flash that happened. Anything else? Yeah, Don?
This guy here had a massive stroke about 10 years ago. It was supposed to be the widowmaker guy or be totally crippled forever. And just to make a long story short, I spoke with the doctor after when they were releasing him, and she was trying to explain to me why he wasn't dead. And she said, okay, there was a massive clot, and then suddenly little veins all around in his head started carrying the blood to where he needed it, so he wouldn't have the traumatic effects to his body that normally would occur. And I said, gee, that almost sounds like a miracle. Have you ever seen it before? And she said, no.
Oh.
She said, it's a miracle.
Wow. That's good. Jeff?
My men's Bible study group, we're going through Psalms, and there's 2 words that stand out throughout the entire book of Psalms that just make you understand the greater love that God has for us. And that is, the 2 words are steadfast love. You see that all the time. That's what God has for us.
Yeah.
And to accept and to understand that and to just swim in that love is what we have to do to have that trust.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, I'll move along, but I'm sure all of us have stories like that. So we're talking about the value of evidence. We're talking about the value of knowledge. So what would be some areas of the Bible that you would say, man, these are the ones I want to make sure I have a firm conviction, I have the knowledge. Whether or not you could share it with somebody, that'd be great, but just to feel good about yourself, to say, that's convincing to me. Are there certain areas, things in the Bible that you'd say, I want to make sure I understand this and that I've anchored it to my life?
The resurrection.
The resurrection always comes up, doesn't it? I mean, Paul says that. The whole faith stands or falls on the resurrection. We need some really good answers. We need to read some material, make sure we're comfortable, not just, well, it says it happened in the Bible. Yeah, but people today, and even some Christians, don't believe or trust the Bible like they can. There are a lot of other reasons to believe in the resurrection.
And even before the resurrection, just evidence that Jesus was a real person.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, are we just following some kind of fairy tale? What else? Anything else you can think of that you'd like to have good solid proof for?
The need for a savior.
Yeah. Which kind of is talking about the human race. What are we? That's a worldview question. Where do we come from? What's our problem? How do we solve the problem? And Christianity has a set of answers for that. I just put a few up here. We won't take the time tonight, but reliability of the New Testament. Why would you trust the New Testament? 2,000-year-old document? Really? You hear people say, oh, it was written in, way after Jesus. No, it wasn't. And there are a lot of reasons to trust the New Testament. Bigger picture, what about the existence of God himself? This is a good time to be alive. Like I said, science is starting to point toward God, not away from God. And I think even things like the existence of the soul. We're hearing a lot of people today say, well, the material universe is all there is, just stuff that you can touch and taste and put in a test tube. So therefore, you don't have a soul. You think you do. You just have a brain. You're just meat. You're a meat computer. And all your joys and all your sorrows, everything about you is neurons firing and chemicals up here. And we have to be able to argue effectively, which is kind of hard to do because you can't say, here's the soul. You have to come up with some good, interesting arguments for the existence of the soul. And if you ever want to, you can go to my website. I've got articles and I've got videos of me talking about all of these things. There are tons of really good books. I'll send you links to I told you there are 4 of them I really like. 2 of them are by J. Warner Wallace. One's by Frank Turek. It's called I Don't Have Enough Evidence to Be an Atheist. It's a great title. By the way, I don't know if you kind of keep up on what Christians are doing. Frank Turek is soaring into the stratosphere as far as his Christianity goes. He used to be, he was okay. He was kind of well known. He's been on all sorts of TV shows now. He was at the Charlie Kirk Memorial and spoke there. And so Turek is becoming a big guy now. So his book is really, really good. Eric?
I think it's faith.
Yeah, what did I say?
Evidence.
Okay, yeah, I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. Thank you for fixing that. So that's, and we'll go faster on chapter 10. I think there's a little bit less here, so don't feel like, we'll get out at 9:30. So we'll still get out at the right time. So that's chapter 9, talking about what are people deconstructing? They're deconstructing from faith. They're getting away from the Christian faith, which is terrible because there's a lot of evidence that's there that they're walking away from. Templeton did that, by the way. If you read that intro, he came up with reasons that Strobel said there are answers to this. He just, anyway, it's kind of sad. So chapter 10 is, so who are the people? What's going on inside here that's making people walk away from Christianity? So first the book has covered the process of deconstruction, that's the how, and what's being deconstructed, that's faith. So this chapter says, let's look at the people and what is working on their inside to make them walk away from the faith. And I think what's powerful about that, it's good to know what's going on in other people's lives, I think, but we can recognize ourselves. We have part of this as well, because these will be human characteristics, not just, that heretic over there. We're going to share some of these characteristics. So there are 5 of them that I want to cover here in the book covers. So number 1, this is the good news, isn't it? We're all made in the image of God. Now, so my question is, if you're talking to somebody who's deconstructed, how would that affect your interactions, do you think, with them? How would you treat them? If you say they are made in the image of God, we're made in the image of God, does that alter or affect at all our way of interacting?
Yes and no.
They're not the enemy. Right? The enemy is the powers above and beyond that are causing this confusion in the world today. They're made in the image of God. They're valuable. They're not the enemy to put down. They're not the enemy to get them in an argument. Ha! you couldn't answer that one. Chuck one up for me. Now, that's not the approach. So we want to come with care and concern. We ask questions and find out, where are you? Where'd that come from? I'm dealing with a guy right now that is responding to a YouTube that I have some YouTube podcasts, and he says, I don't really buy into Christianity. I said, okay, so let's talk. So I asked, what's your background? So he's very nice about it, so we're going to have a good discussion here. So I think that's powerful. We think about these people as fellow image bearers. Here's number 2. There's a flip side to that, isn't there, though? Yes, we can do these wonderful things because God gave us the abilities, but we're all broken, and we're sinners, and we walked away from God. So here's the problem, I think. How does that affect our decisions? Well, I think with a person who's deconstructed, I think in one of 2 ways, a problem has come in their life. It could be they see themselves. They're doing something wrong. And that's the case. Some people, you could give them all the evidence you want, but they're doing some kind of rebellion against God, and they don't want to hear anything about it. But maybe they've seen in other people something that's not so good. And the person who claims to be a Christian, they're all hypocrites. Or that person gypped me out of something valuable, and that person says they're a Christian. That person's stealing stuff on the job, right? So they can look at others and they can look at themselves. And that's pretty hard because, what are you going to say? No Christians are perfect? I don't think so. So that one is a tough one. And it can motivate them toward deconstruction, either because of their views or the attitudes they see in other people. Here's number 3. We're all seekers. I think Paul said it really, really well. I love this. This is in Romans. It's in the book. Romans 2, 6 through 8. I kind of chopped it down so I could get it up here in a short form. He said there are basically 2 kinds of people. He said there are those who, in well-doing, seek for glory and honor and immortality, right? They've got they're looking for something beyond themselves. There's got to be a God, they're thinking. There's got to be something bigger. I'm just living paycheck to paycheck. That can't be it. There's got to be something beyond that. He says, but for those who are self-seeking and do not obey the truth, there will be wrath. So you can either, add this thing here, you can either seek for truth, seek for something beyond yourself, or you can just say, I'll stick with myself, thanks, I'm good, and go from there. That's why I really do think that, the question always comes up, what about the people that have never heard the Gospels? They've never heard of Jesus. Well, I think part of that is what Paul is saying here, that there are people who believe there's something bigger out there. They don't know the name of it, and God's going to look what's happening in Muslim countries. Visions, dreams, people showing up to a minister who's walking around the street saying, I saw you in a dream. There's some books out now that just give you goosebumps. Amazing things are going on. I think if people are seeking him, he's going to show himself some way. Maybe a radio broadcast, something. He'll be there. But unfortunately, that's not everybody. There are a lot of people who are just seeking for themselves. So, you going to say something?
I just thought of something. I remember when I was like the late 60s, early 70s, when I was just a teenager, the big thing was, I need to go find myself. That's self-seeking.
Yeah, it is. That's postmodern. So the question is, we all seek, but what are we seeking? Satisfaction for ourselves? More money? Status? Job? Health? Nothing wrong with these things, but if that's the total focus, we're in trouble. Do you ever hear this? Gee, if we just had enough evidence, we'd believe in God. Do you think that's true?
No.
That was a quick vote. Why?
I love the question Frank Turek always asks at his meetings. He says, if in fact Christianity were true, would you believe in it?
And he said a lot of people will say no. They say no.
They say no.
Because that means there's got to be something out there. That's that postmodern thing again. I don't want, I want to take care of me. You're ruining that if you suggest there's something else going on out there.
And even the scribes and Pharisees and the people in Jesus' day, they saw him. They were with him all the time, and he kept doing miracle after miracle, and they just needed one more sign, but it never happened.
I think part of this kind of gets to the idea of the hiddenness of God. You ever hear people say, well, if you just write his name up in the sky, I believe. I think what they do instead, if the name was written up in the sky, they go get an MRI because they thought there was something wrong mentally. I mean, they're going to, make up alibis or excuses for any of that because God can't do that much that they're going to say, okay, in many cases, just.
Steve read last week, Matthew 28:17. People are standing right there with the resurrected Jesus. Some worshiped, but some doubted.
Yeah.
Jesus is standing right there in front of them.
Yeah.
And they still. It doesn't make any difference if God is saying, hey, I'm God, here I am.
Yeah.
People are not going to go there.
Yeah.
They're not going to choose that.
Here's another characteristic. So we talked about people are bearing they bear the image, they're sinners, they're seekers. Here's the fourth thing, they're captives. And this is not a very pleasant thing to talk about, but look what Paul says in Colossians. He says, don't let this happen to you. See to it that nobody takes you captive by philosophy and empty deceit. So my question is, what bad ideas are out there that are captivating people and grabbing them and taking them away from the truth of Christianity? What comes to mind?
I think it.
A bad idea that I see is prevalent when there's a memorial service or a funeral or talking about the passing of somebody. Oh, they're in heaven.
Oh, yes.
That's assumed. I say that universally almost, that
Yeah.
there's no discussion about the individual's faith. They're in heaven. It's assumed.
Yeah. Yeah, we went to a memorial service 2 years ago or so, and it was really sad because I knew what was going to happen. It was some people at the school that I teach, and they weren't believers. And so you get this kind of fuzzy platitude about he's in a better place, he's looking out for you, he's watching, he knows what's. It's like, man, it's not pretty bad philosophy there. Anything else you think of?
Well, I don't know if this answers that question, but I see that what is it? It's IE or IA on the computer.
Oh, artificial intelligence?
Yeah.
Okay, AI.
Okay, so I just think, I mean, even now, I look at my Facebook or whatever, and I'm like, is that real? Or are you listening to the news? Is that real? I mean, I think more and more it's so deceptive, and we don't know what to believe. We see it with our own eyes, and yet, is that really true? Is that really true?
Yeah.
And I think it's going to come to the point where we won't be able to really trust anything except God's Word, the Bible, and that's it. Not even maybe, hopefully it won't come to this, but maybe we won't even be able to trust pastors. Are they interpreting that the wrong way? Or I just think it's going to come to that someday. It's so deceptive.
And yet you have a lot of people that are saying AI will be the savior. They're looking, have you heard things like, well, someday we'll be able to take our brains, because they don't think we have a soul, and if your brain is nothing but a bunch of wiring, that you could take that wiring and put it on a mainframe someplace, and then your body goes, but you live forever because you're on that mainframe. That's the new anti-Christian view of hope, afterlife, eternal living, if you would call it living. But I mean, that's where we are. And drugs or whatever it is that allow you to live to 120, 150, maybe we'll live forever someday. I mean, to me, that's all bad philosophy, because it's not going to happen. There's no way you can put a mind on a mainframe.
They were doing some comparisons the other day, and they were taking a rice-sized piece of the human brain and analyzing it, and comparing what they would need in a computer. And basically, they would need a computer the size of about 7 football fields.
for that.
That's what's in that brain.
Yeah.
Right. So these guys are thinking they're going to put their brain in a computer in the next 10 years. Ain't going to happen.
Ain't going to happen. Ray Kurzweil is one of the guys that's behind this whole AI stuff. Gosh, wow, the future's going to be great. Well, it's going to be like now. It's going to be good and it's going to be bad. What are you going to say, Mike?
Well, bad ideas flourish in secular higher education with secular humanism being taught as the gospel, the new
Yeah.
gospel.
Yeah. Yeah. So we do need to watch out because people are captive these days. It's so funny. They talk about freedom, but they're captive. They're captured by whatever it is. If it feels good, do it. Pleasure. That's a captive situation. Sexual abuse. I mean, whatever it is. People get into some pretty strange things. Here's one bad philosophy, the idea that we can't arrive at the truth. That's postmodern. One more time tonight. But what does postmodernism say? You make a claim, they go, nah, I don't think I believe that. And you make another claim, they go, I don't believe that either. I've dealt with people where they have a question about Christianity. You ever had this? You answer that question, you think satisfactorily, and they go, yeah, but. And they come up with another question. They come up with another question. It never ends because they don't really want to end up at a solid foundation. They'd rather just kind of wallow off someplace else. So that's compliments of Derrida and postmodernism. How modern is this verse? This is from 2 Timothy. Paul's talking about people who are, quote, always learning and never able to arrive at a knowledge of the truth. That's it. That's exactly what you see in colleges today. A lot of knowledge, but no truth. Yeah, I read that, I thought, wow, that's exactly, 2,000 years ago, that's exactly what we're encountering today. So what do you get if you keep saying, yeah, I don't trust that, I don't trust this, I don't trust that? Where are you going? You're going toward a complete cynicism, which means I don't trust anything, I don't trust anybody. Yeah, but. Their whole life is a yeah, but. Well, how's that the way to live? Everything's, nah, I don't believe it, I don't trust it. Pretty sad. And then number 5, and we'll end on this one, the book points out we're all rebels. That's back to what we've talked about for the last 6 weeks. We don't want the authority to be out there, we want it to be in here. And so we shake our fists at God, unfortunately. And then deconstructors always talking about the freedom they get, right? They've rebelled, they've broken away from the chains of Christianity. And they say things like, freedom is my God now. You know what's sad about this? There's a man named Matt Slick, and he's a pretty well-known apologist. He has websites and really, really sharp guy. This is his daughter. Now you'd think a guy that lived and breathed apologetics would have sat around, maybe he did, sat around at the table with his daughter when she was growing up, but she's walked off. And freedom now is her God. I'll be anxious to see another 5 or 10 years what that freedom has brought to her. My guess is, I don't want it to be that way, but my guess is it's not going to be pleasant. Where does the freedom lead? Do you know people that have headed off to find their freedom? Has it turned out well? Destruction, yeah. Because why? Jeremiah says our heart is evil. And so if you break your chains with any kind of authority figure and you're down to yourself, how's that going to work out? You only want what, is a selfish desire for yourself. It's not going to be good at all. True freedom, here's what Paul says in a couple of places. He says, where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. It's for freedom that Christ has set us free. And then one of my favorites is from Psalm. I will walk about in freedom, for I have sought out your precepts. Precepts are like rules. And I shared that with my grandson because I thought that was a really good verse. You only gain freedom when you're in a relationship with God. He doesn't put a bunch of do's and don'ts on you. That's where you really gain freedom. I remember years ago here at this church, they had cardboard testimonies. Anybody remember that? Somebody would stand up with a cardboard sign. On one side it said, I was a sex addict, or I cheated on my spouse. And then they flipped it over and they said, I found Jesus and I'm married and I'm happy. I just got goosebumps watching that. I had big tears in my eyes because I thought, that's what it's all about. People have tried their own way and it hasn't worked out well at all. And they've ruined other lives as well as their own. You flip that sign around though, and so many people have come back. You can look it up on YouTube. You'll see some videos of these cardboard testimonies. So this will be the last slide here, but I think this is a really good point. In the book they're saying, if we're rebels, we have to acknowledge 3 things that are really hard for all of us to do. 1, we're not the creator. We're the creature. God gets to run the show, right? He's the one that knows. And we're sinners. We depend on His mercy. And then finally, We don't have ultimate knowledge, God does. And God is the source of truth. So I think that's really good stuff.